Hello, Bible readers. It is Tuesday, September 15th, and we are finishing up the Gospel of Matthew today. And we're in Numbers, lots of Numbers, chapters 9 through 12, 4 chapters today. I'm just going to say a couple things about Numbers so that we can get right to Matthew because there's so much to say about Matthew. The imagery of the cloud over the tabernacle is emphasizing the presence of God, which is what Numbers is really trying to get after. How are we to behave in the presence of God? It's a lot like how the descent of God into our world through the person of Jesus is like the cloud over the tabernacle. There's a lot of connection there. When we get to the story of Jesus on the mountaintop with Moses and Elijah and the disciples that he's asked to be there, there is an allusion, a connection to this imagery of the cloud. And then the other piece I wanted to name was that in Numbers, our identity as the people of God is determined by what we do, not by what we say or by our social spot. And so when members of the wilderness community judge their journey as misfortune, God prunes them from the camp by fire. It seems very harsh and extreme. It is a story meant to explain that our behaviors matter. Our responses to God's grace matter. The act of leaving the camp for meat determines their identity. And so, as this commentator says, the meat desired by the rabble may in our own day be money or employment or social prestige. But God recognizes us by what we do. And if we leave the camp in pursuit of the thing we crave, money or whatever it is, then we forfeit our identity as God's people. And he says, we die with the meat still in our teeth. That is a way of thinking about our identity as followers of Jesus. Now I want to get to Matthew. This section of Matthew, these last couple chapters, or this last chapter, these last verses, they explain, I think they speak to what Matthew is uniquely trying to say, in contrast to, and he uses a lot of Mark, but there is something particular and additional that Matthew wants to say. If Matthew is just going to tell the exact same story Mark did, then Mark can do it on Mark's own. Matthew has something more to say, something more specific to say, and we catch the most of that here in this portion of Matthew. There's the burial, there's the empty tomb, and there's the Great Commission. Those are the last three pieces of the Gospel of Matthew. And so, let's see where to start. Matthew's account of Jesus' burial has the setting of a guard of soldiers over the tomb, and that is without parallel in the Gospels. No other Gospel talks about that. Joseph of Arimathea is spoken of differently in Matthew than in Mark. Mark implies that Joseph is a member of the Sanhedrin and took part in the condemnation of Jesus. Matthew insists that Joseph had been a disciple. But the point here of this story is that Jesus is really dead. The resurrection isn't going to make much sense if Jesus isn't really dead first. And so Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, they see where Jesus is buried, and so do the guard. And so the story of Jesus' burial is a necessary part of resurrection because both Jesus' followers and the Romans, through the guards, they know that he's dead and they know where he's buried. And that's an important piece because apparently there must be people who claim that Jesus never was really dead or that his body was stolen by his own disciples. And so that's what Matthew's trying to respond to here. The empty tomb. Two women are the principal continuity pieces regarding the death, burial, and empty tomb. Matthew is the only one to say that the mysterious young man that Mark talks about, Matthew claims that this is an angel and that that's how the stone got rolled away, was by that angel. Matthew is a little more, he has more freedom in dealing with the empty tomb than he does in the whole passion narrative. You know, the whole part of how Jesus is condemned and put on trial. There's some little differences, but this is where the big differences start to happen. This plot between the chief priests and the guards to pay off the guards to keep them quiet, that's a Matthew story. That's nowhere else. And then as we get to the Great Commission, this is the most important part of Matthew. This is the summary of Matthew. The climactic appearance of the risen Jesus to the 11 disciples in Galilee is only found here in Matthew. It's a summary of the whole gospel, and it brings out the three most important themes. The Father has given Jesus supreme authority. The disciples are to share their discipleship, not just with Jews, but with non-Jews. And the Spirit of Jesus will guide and protect the church until God's kingdom comes in fullness. Those, if we don't take anything else from Matthew, those are the three lessons Matthew's trying to teach. I am one with my God. My God is with us, all of us, at all times and in all places.